Have you had an encounter with Mr. or Mrs. Tall, Dark, and Scary, and you'd like to hear it narrated on this channel? Well, if so, send me an email with all the details. You can send your email to contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Hey there, welcome to Buckeye Bigfoot. Now tonight we have an email that tells us about how Bigfoot saved a friendship. Now, that's a little unusual, I grant you, but I think you're going to like it. So go ahead and grab your snackage and get your booty on up in the saddle. We're about to head down into Sasquatch Valley. Let's go. I had a wild occurrence while on a hunting trip. I'm leaving out the specific area where this happened. I hope that's okay. This happened in 2005 during deer hunting season. For me, it's a chance to get together with the guys on the weekend, smoke some cigars, tell a few dirty stories, and to shoot some game. So I expected a good time when Nate, the friend who usually organizes these trips, emailed me with an invite. What I did not expect to find was Nick. Nick was a hunting buddy who'd fallen away from the group. He was going to be along for the trip. Okay, that's a little inaccurate. The rest of the group knew him as a hunting buddy, but my time around him reached back much farther. We were inseparable in high school. Neither of us attended college, so we had no worries about drifting apart. We each served as the best man in on another's wedding and were named godfather of one another's kids. We were brothers by bond, if not by blood, and I doubted that anything could get between us. Or that's what I thought. After we eclipsed 40, Nick changed. Some of the things that came out of his mouth stunned me. At first I pretended the comments meant nothing, that he hadn't meant them. After a while I couldn't deny it anymore. I felt really disappointed. I called him out on those things more than once, but you know how things go when people express views that are not only strong and unflappable, but cruel. After that, I'd heard everything I wanted to from him. We never had a blowout fight or even a heated argument. We drifted apart when we weren't meant to, mostly because I didn't want to listen to certain things anymore, and he insisted on saying them. Whatever. Despite no official parting, our friendship, or lack of one, included a sense of finality. I knew it was the end, and so did he. No emails to get together for a beer, no Christmas cards, nothing. After all those years, we had only our memories to reflect on. When I saw Nick with the group, other memories flooded back. The person I thought I knew was present in body, but not in soul. We studied one another at first, but didn't actually speak. Again, we'd had no blowout, just an unceremonious drifting apart. But even that carried such a negative undertone. Frankly, we might as well have ended our friendship with an ugly fight. Maybe that would have offered some real finality. We broke into small groups to wander through the woods. Nate paired Nick and I together. No, wait, that's not exactly right. The others simply paired up, leaving Nick and I to join forces. And why wouldn't they? We'd always done that in the past, and I guess the others didn't get the memo about our friendship. I'm not the kind of guy that fusses over these sorts of things, and neither was Nick. Besides, in our group, you don't talk about that stuff. Period. You can call it a guy thing, I guess. Even after we entered the woods, we said nothing to one another. It would have looked chilly to an observer. But honestly, what was there to say? I will admit that I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how he would react. Maybe I should make another admission while I'm at it. I didn't have the guts to speak first. I know how silly that sounds. You're never too old to worry about how someone will react to something you've said. As it was, he barely looked at me, and I saw no promise in this partnership. We spread out a little at first, which seemed like the smartest move. That would maybe get us through this, and maybe we could salvage the trip. That changed shortly after, when I felt a bullet whiz past my head. I gasped for air and touched the palm to the side of my head to check for blood, as if I'd actually taken the bullet. We had always followed safety rules to ensure something like that never happened. Not that Nick cared about that after such a dramatic attitude shift. He turned into a different guy, remember? When I marched back to Nick, he looked at me as if nothing had happened. I asked him what on earth was he thinking? Oh, and my language was far more colorful than that. But Nick seemed preoccupied by something. "Did you see it?" he asked. I asked him what. Then Nick told me he'd spotted something, but couldn't tell if it was a deer. I told him no, I hadn't seen anything. And then I asked him again, what was he thinking? He seemed completely unconcerned that he'd compromised my safety. It made me think that my criticism of him before our friendship ended was completely justified. We never had had a blowout before, but came as close to one as ever in the woods. Even raised voices can spook the deer, and that wouldn't help our cause. I stomped away from Nick, something I'd never done before. The rule was to stick with the person you were paired up with so you don't get lost. I stopped caring about rules, though, the minute that bullet zipped past my head. 20 minutes must have passed before I started to calm down. I felt the urge to relieve myself every 5 minutes or so because, well, I just couldn't shake that scare out of me. Nick was so full of garbage, I thought. There was no deer. If I didn't know better, I would have suggested he'd tried to kill me. I mean, what on earth did he think he'd seen? Maybe I would bug out of the trip early, I decided. The whole thing was doomed from the start. If the others asked what happened, I would tell them the truth and not care if they ever invited me on another trip. And then it happened. I heard noises coming from maybe 20 feet away, only this didn't sound like deer. Trust me, I've hunted enough deer to know that sound in my sleep. No, this sounded like 2 massive feet rather than 4 hooves. Sometimes your mind plays tricks on you when you're out in the woods like that, and especially when you've almost taken a bullet. It had happened to me before, but this hooked my attention and held it, especially when I heard the sounds again. It wasn't all in my head anymore, right? I stepped carefully, summoning all of my effort to avoid making a sound. Normally, deer will appear to you, but they never come too close. You make one move, and they'll bolt. If you're out in the open, you'll see 2 or 3 of them prancing and playing. Deer are things of beauty, really. The noises returned, and I primed my rifle, aimed it, ready to fire. I inched forward, alert to anything that might cross my path. And then I saw something. An enormous figure appeared in the distance. I took my kids to the zoo a couple of times, and this sight called those memories to mind. It looked a lot like an ape, but was wider and, frankly, scarier. Now that's the closest description I can give to what I saw, at least at that distance. For all I knew, it could have been a bear. It obviously was not a deer. Something, like a voice in my head, urged me not to shoot. I mean, I guess I would have done that had the thing come too close, but so far, I wasn't sure it even knew I was there. Had Nick seen it? I considered turning back to find him so I could ask, but also to keep us both safe. Then I thought better of it. Was I nuts? Nick obviously didn't care about keeping either of us safe. Whatever this thing was, I would shoot and capture it myself. The logistics could wait. Like, this thing was much larger than a deer or anything else I'd hunted. Hauling it out of the woods would create a nightmare. But again, the sight gripped me too fiercely to care about anything else. Sometimes I fall so deeply into the moment that I tune out the rest of the world. That's the beauty of the hunting trips. Every problem you have vanishes if you focus hard enough on tracking your game. But this was different from anything I'd ever experienced. Hunting deer came with a routine I knew all too well. I understood how deer behaved, but I didn't know a thing about this, whatever the heck it was. I glanced over my shoulder, knowing this thing could come up behind me at any second. Like I said, there were countless unknowns at play, and I had to protect myself. A scream ripped through the crisp fall air, yanking me out of that zone that I was telling you about. The scream had to have come from Nick, based on the fact that he was still closer to me than the others. Seeing the beast alone might have triggered the scream, but I knew better. Guys like Nick didn't just scream like that for no reason, even if the beast was hideous and menacing. He was in trouble, needing rescue, and I had to act. Another scream belted out into the woods. That one jump-started my heart, because I knew it wasn't a mistake. Nick had screamed for a reason. And this sort of thing was totally off script. We'd taken common-sense precautions, but had never faced real danger before. It was uncharted territory, to say the least. Though I hadn't stepped into a church in years, I crossed myself before continuing, because something told me I might not leave the woods alive. For a moment, I worried I'd managed to get lost, but followed the sound of Nick's voice calling out for help until I reached a relatively open area. There I found Nick, and the largest and most menacing creature I've ever seen. Even the figure it cut previously couldn't do it justice. Of course, that's assuming it was the same creature I had spotted earlier. I hated to think there could be more than one of these beasts in the woods, but I couldn't rule anything out. Nick had dropped his rifle. I noticed it on the ground about 10 feet from where he stood, backing away from the monster. I honestly didn't know what to call it. Creature? Monster? Sasquatch? Yeti? Cryptid? I didn't know. And it didn't matter, not when this thing was about to eat Nick alive. "Stand back," I shouted at Nick, preparing to shoot the thing. Nick either couldn't hear me or had tuned me out. The latter seems the most likely. When you're confronted by danger on that scale, you only have survival on your mind. The problem was, if Nick didn't move, I risked plugging him with a bullet. On the other hand, each moment of hesitation pushed my friend one step closer to certain death. What on earth could I do? I drew a deep breath, feeling my heart jackhammer against my chest. Normally, I would have gone ahead and fired. I'm not saying I nailed my target every time, but I was a good shot. Still, this creature had changed the game. Finally, I squeezed the trigger and fired off a shot. No worries about missing. That sucker landed. Problem was that I couldn't get a good angle on him from my position. The bullet struck the beast's upper arm, and it erupted in a growl. That meant the thing could be hurt, which reassured me in a weird way. In that position, you take what you can get. Less encouraging was the fact that it barely budged. Even worse, the Sasquatch remained on a mission and continued toward Nick. I fired another round, this one landing on its hip. That should have slowed it down at least. And if the thing had been human, I would have crippled it with that shot. But as you know by now, I was dealing with something far from human. The next round struck its lower leg, and finally the beast slowed down. I hadn't caused nearly enough damage to kill it, but I had bought Nick some time. I rushed forward, grabbed the rifle that he'd dropped, and I handed it to him. We stood side by side, our rifles aimed at the creature. I fired again, striking its shoulder. Nick fired, plugged around into its arm. By now the creature bled from multiple bullet wounds, and we still had not knocked that thing off its feet. Sooner or later, we would run out of ammo, or at least it seemed that way. The creature wasn't invincible. The blood pouring out of its wounds proved that, but I had no idea what we would have to do to kill it. Nick and I said nothing to each other during our standoff against the beast. We hadn't zoned out like I mentioned earlier. We were just determined to slay this thing and to survive. Something deep inside told me the next bullet would finish it. I only needed to squeeze the trigger once more, and that would mercifully be enough. I froze, and Nick must have done the same, or else he would have fired off another shot to keep the thing at bay. Though I knew what must be done, I just couldn't do it. It was like my body had seized up. If I couldn't act, we would die. I couldn't stare into that monster's beastly eyes and doubt that it intended to make us dinner. Now it bared its teeth at us, and I swear I'd never seen a set of chompers like that. I obviously had no time to stop and count, but I'm as sure as I can be that it had half again as many teeth as an ordinary human being. It stretched its arms out at us. I expected it to have claws, but what it did have looked more like fingers. The creature took one massive step forward, and then another. I swore one of its steps could have accounted for 4 or 5 steps from a human. That brought us close enough together that it could have reached out and grabbed me if it had wanted to. I squeezed the trigger again, blasting a bullet into the Sasquatch's chest, dropping the creature to the ground. For a moment, everything fell silent except for the whistle of the wind breezing through. Nick and I glanced at one another. My breathing still hadn't slowed. With my luck, I would have a coronary. It had to be dead, I decided. I shot that thing right in the heart. If it could feel pain and bleed, then certainly it could die. When you've been through what Nick and I had that day, you would question everything. I dropped my rifle. So did Nick. When I peered down at my hands, I found that they were trembling. I already felt sick to my stomach. Sooner or later I would probably cry. Not that I wanted Nick or any of the guys to get a load of that. We inched over to the creature and stood over it. I figure we would have had to haul this thing out of the woods ourselves like we would a deer. And this one would require a ton of an explanation, but I didn't care. Survival was all that mattered. Before I knew it, as I stood there, that thing snatched my ankle and dragged me down to the ground. Thank God I didn't hit my head on the way down. I sat up, swinging my arms at the beast futilely. It had me, and after the fight we'd put up, this monster was going to win. As I struggled, I heard a rifle blast, and the creature howled. It regained its feet and lumbered off into the woods. For all I knew, it had run off into the woods to die. Nick stood over me, stone-faced. Then he offered his hand. When I accepted it, he hauled me up to my feet. "I bet you thought you were done for just now," he said. I told him I really did. and that I still wouldn't believe that we would truly be safe until we'd gotten out of these woods. He agreed, and we headed home early. On the way back to the truck, we started talking for the first time in a few years. He told me that he had strong opinions and wouldn't go back on some of them, but for the first time seemed to understand why I felt the way I did. We talked about getting together again. And here's the crazy thing. We actually did it. It wasn't just talk. We met up at the corner bar where we used to go, and we enjoyed a beer together. In fact, it felt like we'd never experienced a moment of tension between us. None of that would have been possible if not for the Sasquatch we found in the woods that day. I saved Nick's life, and he saved mine. I want to think that we both did what any decent human being would have done for another person. The animosity shouldn't have mattered, but I couldn't deny its presence. Nick and I came through for each other when we needed it most, and it seemed so easy. And I just let it go. Whatever disappointment I'd felt for Nick didn't matter when he was about to be devoured by a creature that could have weighed 500 pounds or more. Looking back, I still can't believe that the beast, Sasquatch, or whatever you want to call it, taught me about what's important in life. All right, my Sasquatch. Well, they didn't leave me a name, and their email didn't give a hint to a name, so we're just going to leave them as an anonymous writer. Wow, what an incredible story. Thank you for sending that in. All right, now listen, on this past Tuesday, I had said that I had a small announcement to make, and I do. But the announcement has changed just a little bit in the last few days. So here's the thing. Over the last several years, many of you have said that I should do some other stories, not just Bigfoot, but other stories to listen to. The problem has always been, I'm not a writer, so where do I get the material? But I have recently fixed that problem by hooking up with a lot of other writers. And no, I'm not talking for this channel. Not at all. You see, my original announcement was going to say I was releasing a new channel and an actual podcast along with it. I mean, a real podcast. And I was planning to release it all, launch it, that is, July 4th weekend, just a couple weeks away. Well, I've hired some writers and I'm working with some other people to bring you these great stories. But, it's taking a little longer than I'd planned. Writers don't write on a dime. And I mean time, not just the money. So I might be closer to August before it's up and running. Now, right now, I do have a name for the channel. I'm not sure I want to say it. The last time I playfully mentioned a new possible channel name, I went to go lock it up the next day, and someone had just done it just that day, which means they heard my channel and they locked it up. Not that they had any success with it, but that's another story. So anyway, I'm a little more careful now. So anyway, this channel is going to have a mix of topics ranging from anything and everything from light horror, hauntings, mysterious happenings, ghosts, maybe some post-apocalyptic, just a little of everything. And believe it or not, right alongside that channel, I'm working on another channel that would be a mix of like science fiction and fantasy, all kinds of stories. I'm just working to find writers for those as well. So if you write stories, send me an email. Maybe we can talk because I'm in need of writers. And as soon as I have a firm launch date, I'll let you know all the details. You know what? Oh, heck with it. I have already tied up the channel name on YouTube, made a quick piece of a logo, which you can see up here on the screen. So here's the first channel's new name and a little bit of a tagline. Are you ready? Here it is on the screen. It's called Under a Dark Moon. Are you ready to meet the unknown under a dark moon? I'm also going to be a little less chatty on that channel, just letting you know up front. And that's okay to be chatty on YouTube with your audience. You want that kind of back and forth engagement. That doesn't work well on podcasts. They're kind of a one-way street. All right. I just wanted to let you know how it's going to go. And just stay tuned. I will give you my launch date when I have it. And if you have ideas for stories or other things, just send me an email. The channel is already up there, so to speak. But there's no video, so don't get excited. But soon, it'll be there. I hope to see you under a dark moon. All right, everyone. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you for staying with me to the end. And until we meet up again, please, always remember, Absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening.